Before we get started this evening, I'd like to remind everyone to please turn your cell phones to mute. All right. So if you would stand with me for the invocation and pledge of allegiance, please.
Let's pray. Good and gracious God, we thank you for this gift of life. Help us to act with character and conviction. Help us to listen with understanding. Help us to speak with clarity and restraint. Remind us that we are stewards of your authority. Guide us to be the leaders your people need. Help us to see the humanity and dignity of those who disagree with us and treat all people with reverence as your creation deserves. And finally, Father, renew us with the strength of your presence and the joy of helping to build a community here in Vienna. We pray all this in Jesus' name.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to call to order this regular session of the Vienna City Council for the December the 8th, 2022. Let the record reflect that I've taken roll, that all members of council are present. Having a quorum, we will proceed. This evening, before we do our public forum, we have several people who have signed up. So I would just like to remind you all that we do have a 5-minute time limit. And so if you would please do your best to adhere to that, that would sure make the evening go faster. So having said that, our first speaker this evening will be Mr. Chad Emmerich.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Chad Emmerich, and I am a resident of Vienna. I wanted to take this moment and give my opinion of the current design and process on the Jackson Pool renovation. For almost a year, I have either attended council meetings in person or watched them virtually. I remember when the safety issues were first discussed in council and this process started. I even spoke during a public forum on March 24th, 2022, addressing the decision to either open or close the pool. After seeing pictures that the mayor presented, I agreed with the decision to close the pool for the 2022 season so that it could be renovated. Then as we fast forward and the pool project officially started, there was a change in direction from repair and reopen to remodel and upgrade. It was at this point that the public began to get involved and they voiced their concerns on the desires for the pool. During public meetings, several times I heard repeatedly ask for a splash pad, zero entry to both the main pool and baby pool, swim lanes, and ADA entry features. Sadly, I do not believe that these items have been fully addressed or incorporated in the overall design. I was disappointed with the plan when it was unveiled and all 4 renderings were really of one design in 4 different configurations. I am in full support of the renovation of the main pool, the baby pool, the pump house, and the shower and concession building. This action is necessary and should be done. I would like to ask, can anyone show me where a centerpiece option such as the slide originated? I am unsure of it as it was never requested during the public meetings to my knowledge. I do know that the difference between borrowing $4 million and $2 million over a course of 10 years at 4% is the difference of $40,000 a month and $20,000 a month. This is with the city taking $2 million from its reserve. With an estimated cost difference in interest being anywhere from $400,000 to $900,000, this savings in interest alone would build a spectacular water or splash pad area somewhere in Vienna. I agree with one of the statements that Mrs. Elam made during the last meeting. This council is attempting to correct the neglect of the pool by past councils, but this administration has had over a decade to address the maintenance issues of Jackson Pool and have allowed it to fall into disrepair. This is a huge financial obligation that you are asking the citizens of Vienna, future councils, and future administrations to bear. I have school-age children, and I asked them what they thought. Their answers were genuine and impartial. They said, "Dad, it would be cool, but eventually get old." They said they would rather swim, play with their friends, and jump off a diving board. Even watching my own kids in the pool, I see them spend all day jumping in the pool, climbing out, and jumping in the pool again. So in making your decision, I would ask you to consider the following questions. First of all, what is the maintenance cost associated with a slide structure such as this? What guarantee is there on this structure? Is there any guarantee that it will last the duration of the loan? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years? What is the future availability of replacement parts if something breaks? And does the feature truly justify the cost? Is this truly the best use of $2 million of taxpayers' money on a facility that is only open approximately 80 days a year? On another note, switching gears, I would like to ask if anyone feels that having 24 hours to review this material is adequate to make a decision on such a huge obligation, then cast a vote for it. In closing, I will say that governing and leading people should never be taken personally. Just because we disagree does not mean that we can't work together. As we say in the Army, mission first. Thank you.
Tracy Hively.
Good evening, everybody. I am here to express my disappointment in not having a splash pad and not having a zero entry into our pool. I just wanted to say that a chairlift is great for people with disabilities. However, it doesn't allow me to access the pool with dignity. I'm sure that the chairlift will have to be under lock and key. As kids are, they will be playing with the chairlift anytime they get, I'm sure. So I'm sure I'd have to get somebody to help me to get on the chairlift, to get in the pool, to get out of the pool. And I just think a zero entry into the pool would be so much better for me to keep my dignity and being able to do something on my own without getting assistance. I don't think it would cost that much more. I think a chairlift would be good for some people that have that are in wheelchairs, but for myself and many other people, including parents with young children, the elderly, a splash pad as well would be better for them because kids can enjoy them from infantry up to the elderly. Everyone's included. It's all inclusive, and I would just like to see my money spent on something like that instead of the 22-foot monstrosity of a sliding board. I guess that's about it. Thank you. And also, Randy, I would also like to say too that, well, I've been a resident of Vienna all my life, 45 years. I've never been here before. This is the first time I've been here. And I wanted to let you know that when I grew up on 12th Avenue off of 28th Street, that you was the only person to stop at my lemonade stand and buy lemonade off of me. So, and we really appreciated that. The neighborhood kids, we went crazy. So thank you for that.
Charlie Taylor.
So I'm going to start out with some questions and comments that I have first that I feel like should be answered by council for the concerned citizens of Vienna. I'll be primarily talking about the baseball fields. They don't necessarily have to be answered today, as I know you guys can't really reply back, but I'll provide them to you in writing later so you can answer them accordingly. I was able to get my hands on the bylaws and the agreement of incorporation for the VRIA. The documents are very conflicting, and it needs to be brought to light which document controls the way the organization is ran. The original agreement of incorporation gives much more power to the community, as it should, and the bylaws have it run more of a dictatorship in which essentially no change can be made by forces outside of the sitting board members, or even allow new board members to easily get on to the board. Do they have any documentation of changes in the bylaws over the years with specific dates when each portion that was changed was voted on? Are the VRI meetings open to the public? Do the VRI meetings need to be advertised to the public? How do you become a member of the VRIA? With the conflicting information between the two documents, it's very hard to tell. What day and location will the annual meeting be? To my understanding, in both documents, it seems like the board is chosen on the annual meeting, which one document says sometime in January, just any time in January. The other one says a specific day in February. I understand that the VRA is a private organization, but they are ultimately funded by the city and are supposed to be working for the good of the community as a whole. Right now, they are getting the benefits of being a private company, but also getting the benefits of being funded by the city. If they are going to have all this say in what happens with the recreational facilities of our town and the opportunities of our children, then the public needs to be able to attend their meetings and have a fair chance to remove them from office if they are overstepping their boundaries. And that's how it was set. That's how it was set up to be initially. This question is in regards to what they can currently do with the motion that's been approved like a month ago. Does the VRA currently have the ability to start any construction or demolition of fields 4, 5, and 6 tomorrow if they wanted to? Or do they need to go through council first? What if they have the project fully privately funded? Does that change anything? So if some private entity is willing to pay for the whole thing, do they have to go to the Parks Board first and then also come here for approval? Or if they're paying for it themselves, do they actually need your approval to do it? Okay. If everyone on the VRI thinks it is acceptable to split up baseball all over town, then the same should be true for soccer. I've identified at least 4 throughout the city field they want, but between all the sites, there's plenty of space. You can't.
All right, so good evening, council. It's good to see you, and just want to start this off by thanking you, because one thing I've noticed about myself, if I'm not that involved in the city's politics that I live in, and now that you guys have made a decision on something that's very, very, very important to me in my life, now I'm involved, and I'm going to stay involved because I realize this is something that our citizens should do. So thank you very much for that. So I'm going to start this off with a rhetorical question. Who's in charge? See, because I really don't understand. I'm a simple man. I don't understand politics. So in the process, I've been doing a little research. I've read about some job descriptions, not just for Vienna's politicians, but also other cities. And I've watched previous council meetings, and I'm starting to get involved. And I'm curious as to who presides over the meetings, because as I watch previous council meetings, especially this last one that you guys had about the $2.2 million slide, and I saw how that went down, and I'm sure I'm not the only skeptic in this city or in this town, but it just makes me wonder who's in charge. So, quote, "No one up here would support cutting programs." And that was our Mayor, Randy Rapp, that said that. But I think everything's been presented to you guys. We're cutting programs, essentially. I mean, you don't have to necessarily call it cutting. We'll call it ruining. Because here's the thing, is there's a compromise that's needed to be made. But when you have a disagreement between multiple parties, in order for a compromise to be made, those multiple parties have to come together. And the VRIA, and see, I'm learning a lot about this process because, see, I'm just the baseball coach that shows up and gives his volunteering energy as much as like every bit of it to these children, because that's all I care about. The political game, because that's what this feels like, is a game, is above me. But I will say they refuse to even engage. I don't understand how you can reach a compromise, or at least explain to somebody why you're going to put them on the street. Now, talk is cheap, but you're not doing that. We're going to just put baseball fields elsewhere. But even if you go to the website to see, okay, so they don't want to engage. So you go to the website. The capabilities of the Vienna Rec website, everything works. And I challenge you guys to go test this out until you get to the board members. And you click on the board members and that link will not open. And that recently came down from what I understand. Before you could have got on there and found out who the board members are. So it feels like a game of hide and seek. And the thing is, you know, I don't know if the heat was on at the last council meeting that all the baseball people showed up or what it was, but we just want a compromise, a resolution. That's what we want. But nobody refuses to speak. And so I think the residents of the city need to see that. It needs to be spotlighted that very few people are making decisions for the many. And last I checked, this is a representative government. You guys represent us. So who's in charge? Now, from what I understand, we're having a meeting next weekend where VRIA is going to push to take all of the sports out of the hands of the city. And they're going to be in charge of all of that. Now, that's just from what I hear, so you can take that for what it's worth. It's hearsay, but we're having a meeting next week over this. And I know for a fact if that happens, ruin is the best word. And I see my time, I got to hustle up, so I'm going to put it to you like this. My daughter plays soccer. She's 4 years old, okay? I'm not a complaining person. Now, if I was a complaining person, I could come to this meeting with a list of complaints about how that soccer program was ran. Now, I'm not against soccer. I didn't complain about soccer when I showed up. I said I was glad about showing up on Saturday mornings and watching my 4-year-old daughter run around. But if you want the details on that running around, she plays on a team with 2 other girls. There's 3 girls on the team, and they're being coached by a 14-year-old. And the 14-year-old, nothing against him, but you can tell he doesn't have a lot of experience working with young kids. And then when you talk to people, the complaints are way larger than the compliments. So I'm not trying to put anybody down, but I know this. If the baseball is going to be ran, because the baseball's not broke. We're going to fix something that's not broke. If the baseball's going to be ran the same exact way, the program that my daughter plays for, here's your final outcome. I'm out. I take my volunteering energy and I take my contingent with me and I go to another organization and I give them what I got. And also, final outcome, election season is going to be fun this year. It's going to be more fun or just as fun as baseball season. So, who's in charge?
The minutes from the November the 10th regular council meeting have been printed, posted, and circulated. And the minutes from the December the 1st special council meeting have been printed, posted, and circulated. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
I have a few corrections to the December 1st meeting, if I can make a motion.
You don't have to make a motion, just point them out to Mrs.
Okay,
Neal.
if I could kind of just hand this to her with a few changes to it then.
Well, you need to tell them, and then just that would
Okay.
make it easier on her.
There was just a few things really quick. And the minutes about discussion item number 3, just wanted to clarify that I was asking for Omni to provide cost options without renderings. I didn't necessarily want to have an additional cost for 2 more slide options, but I wanted to have something for council to consider. And then also kind of about halfway down, I just wanted to clarify that I said that part of the reason Omni was hired was because they could meet the timeline. And I want to be fiscally responsible and not tied to a timeline. The other quick one down in discussion item 4, I wasn't entirely sure. I'm not sure if it was a grammatical error with something that Jim Leach was talking about, Councilman Leach. And I don't know exactly what the intent there was for that. So I didn't know if that could be fixed.
I'm not seeing.
So it says he also spoke to the timeline issue, saying he would counsel to ask Omni.
Oh, yeah, he would like counsel.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you.
No, that's okay. And then the last one was under council comments. I was quoted in the newspaper saying this, and I just wanted to be clear about that, that I felt that the pool approach has been rushed, and I'm disheartened by the process to this point.
Okay.
All right. Then we'll leave the minutes off the December the 1st special meeting until they're corrected. So the minutes from the November the 10th regular council meeting have been printed, posted, and circulated. Are there any corrections to the minutes? The no objections in the minutes will stand approved as posted. Report of the treasurer, Councilman Leach.
Reconciliation of funds for City of Vienna dated December 5th, 2022. I've reviewed the reconciliation of funds. The accounts are in order and the city is financially sound.
All right, thank you.
And one thing with this, with respect to the short budget report, I want to request, I mean, we do review that, but it gets really cumbersome to get to the rest of the agenda. I wonder if we could begin including that as a link that we can open, as opposed to having to paginate down through 20 or 30 pages to get to the rest of the agenda.
I can do that.
Are we good?
Hmm?
All right.
Was it?
So then we move on to our unfinished business this evening. We have none. We go to new business. First item on our agenda this evening is an ordinance on first reading approving the 2022 replacement pages to the codified ordinances. This is something that we do annually when the state legislature changes items in our code and state code, and we must adjust our ordinance to reflect those. And so you'll see down through there all of the particular items in our ordinances that have been affected by that or by the ordinances which we have passed as a body. And so, or Russ, would you do me a favor and read this in the, just down to where the section 1 starts?
An ordinance to approve the 2022 replacement pages to the codified ordinances, whereas certain provisions within the codified ordinances should be amended to conform with current state law, and whereas various ordinances of a general and permanent nature have been passed by council, which should be included in the codified ordinances, and whereas council has heretofore entered into a contract with the Walter H. Drain Company to prepare and publish such revision, which is before council. Do you want me to stop there?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. All right. Once this ordinance is passed on 2 readings, they will be included with our ordinance book that's at the library if anyone cares to go down and take a look at them. Each one of you should have a copy of it, and of course the ordinance books are all updated once it passes second reading. So I'll entertain a motion on first reading to the ordinance for the 2022 replacement pages to the codified ordinances.
So,
It's been moved and seconded that we approve on first reading the replacement pages to our codified ordinances. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then I'll call for the question. All those in favor on first reading, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We'll leave that back on the agenda for the next meeting. The second item on our agenda this evening is an ordinance on first reading, providing for a manner of service of notice of sidewalk repair or repavement upon non-resident property owners with no agent in the city, and implementing a program for shared repair and relaying of sidewalks and curbs abutting residential properties. This is an ordinance that Mr. Mancuso has brought forth. We simply took the ordinance from Parkersburg. They've had a very successful program down there. Basically what it is, if you have a sidewalk in front of your house that needs repaired, if you are willing to pay the cost of the materials, the city will pay the cost of the installation, or we'll do the installation ourselves, depending on where that is. It's worked out very well for them. I know that some of the people that work here for the city live in Parkersburg, and they've used this program and are very happy with the way it turned out. It is one of those things. It is not the city shall repair the sidewalks. It is a cooperative effort. And so if we look at your sidewalk and determine that, yes, it does need to be replaced, we will work with you on that. I don't believe that most folks realize that if you have a sidewalk in front of your home, that it is the homeowner's responsibility to maintain that sidewalk. And there's a lot of people that have sidewalks and a lot of people that don't. So that's the purpose of this ordinance, is to set up the program basically the same way that Parkersburg has it, so that we can participate with our residents in a cost-sharing effort. All right? So I'll entertain a motion on first reading of the ordinance providing for the repavement program and shared repair and relaying of sidewalks and curbs abutting residential properties.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the ordinance on first reading, approving for the repavement and relaying of sidewalks and curbs abutting residential properties. Is there any further discussion?
One thing, Craig let me know he's not feeling well tonight, but that he thinks this program's a good idea. He's in support of it. And the second, I just wanted to make clear, so this is just repair and relay. For example, because you can have a curb and just yards and somebody says, I want a sidewalk in front of my house. This program does not apply to that, correct?
Right.
Okay, that's all I have.
But Craig will be the one to administer the program as it goes. And so I think that his support, we're willing to go. All
Yeah.
right. All right. If there's no further discussion, then I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the ordinance on first reading, implementing a program for shared repair and relaying of sidewalks and curbs abutting residential properties, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, motion carries on first reading. We'll also need that back. Next item on our agenda this evening is the city recreation programs. Before I go into the letter that I received, I will say this. For all of you that have come out to speak about baseball again, I think Charlie made a comment that is probably the crux of this whole issue. The cooperation that goes on between the various groups that affect the recreation programs of our children and our adults needs to have better communication. There's absolutely no question about that. I still think that we have the finest recreation programs in our area. We have kids come in from cities all around us to participate. And when I made the statement that we would not cut programs, we will not cut programs. We may lose kids out of our programs. We may lose volunteers, whatever the circumstances are, but we are not going to eliminate programs for our kids. We will find a way to do it. Everybody may not be happy with the solution, but that is something that, when you ask the question, who's in charge? All right. By ordinance, I went back to our city attorney and I asked Russ if he would please look at the way that the ordinance that established the park board was created. Years ago, when Mr. Jackson donated the property to the city of Vienna where the old original park was established, there was a park board that was established to develop the park because it was raw land. And that's where the park board started. Over the years, the park board has, still been in operation, but at times it's not been very active. But now there's a resurgence of the park board. And so based on the ordinance as we have them now, did you pull that up, Mr. Skogstad? Would you please read what that says?
Section 13707, powers and duties, and that's under the Article 137 of the Board of Parks and Recreation. Paragraph A says, Council does hereby delegate to the Board of Parks and Recreation the Director of Parks Management Control. I'm sorry. Let me read that in a way so it makes sense. Council does hereby delegate to the Board of Parks and Recreation and the Director of Parks management and control of all parks, together with all recreation facilities and activities therein, except the following duties and responsibilities, which are hereby delegated to the Department of Public Works: the maintenance and repair of all streets within all the aforementioned parks. Paragraph E says all of the power and authority delegated to the board and director of parks is subject to approval, modification, or rejection by council.
So when you look at the way the ordinance was originally drafted, they're an advisory board. They have no money. So it's a partnership between the city and the park board because they make the plans for the park. They designate how things are to be done. But then the issue that was brought up about how expensive the renovations are to Bennett Stump Field, that position would be if they wanted to renovate one of our major fields or whatever, they have to come back to council for funding. That's the way it works. It's kind of a checks and balances thing because we all have to be partners in this. We were all invested in this. These are our children. I think everyone in this room that's lived here for any length of time participated in some form of Vienna Rec. And so over the years, clear back to when, Daryl Dotson and Don Underwood were the two gentlemen that ran most of the programs that I participated in, which was 55 years ago. but it's still the same. Parents involved, parents teaching their kids how to play, how to learn how to win and how to lose, how to be part of a team. And so I think that for whatever reason, I think that that partnership that we need in order to be the best that we can be has somehow gotten sidetracked. And so the reason why that I put this on the agenda tonight is I received a letter on November the 29th, and I gave each council member a copy of it, and it says, "Dear Mayor Rapp, this is to inform you and the city of Vienna that Vienna Recreational and Improvement Association is interested in running all sports programs and concessions for the city of Vienna. We are prepared to do so immediately. We look forward to continuing to serve our community as we have over the past 70 years of our partnership." I am going to refer that to the park board, because the park board will ultimately make the recommendation and make that decision as it is to send back to council, because that's the way our ordinance is drafted. All right? Now, you have an opportunity to get with Vienna Rec and the park board and express whatever concerns, offer whatever you can to make this partnership work. When you ask who's in charge, it's one of those things where none of us can survive without the other.
Are you addressing me?
No, sir.
Okay, because you're looking at me the entire time. Because as I say, there's a VRI member in this room right now.
I'm not addressing anyone. I apologize. I try to scan the room as I speak, okay?
Sorry.
And since you brought that up, Jason, I guess I'm looking at Charlie. I have a lot of respect for Charlie. I have always had a lot of respect for you, and I know how serious you are about this, okay? And so when I say these comments, I'll try to scan around, because I'm not picking on you. Other than your name, that's the only reason why you stick out of my mind. So, but at any rate, I think that the opportunity to build on what we have is going to take cooperation between each of these bodies. The things that need to be done to be improved can't be done without funding. That's us. We as a city cannot run the recreation programs for our youth. We do not have enough employees to take on that responsibility. There is not another city in our area that does the recreation programs themselves. The city of Parkersburg uses Wood County Recreation. Williamstown uses the recreation group that they have. The city of Belpre does the same. The city of Belpre, the city of Williamstown, and the city of Parkersburg do not run their rec programs. I don't know the answer to this question, but I can guarantee you this is not going to go away. We will work this out. All right? So I've presented the letter to you all this evening, just telling you that this is the request from Vienna Rec. I am going to give it to Tim Roberts, who is president of the park board, which I'm sure they will deal with it at their next meeting. And then I will report back to you and tell you what the options are or what decisions have been made. All right? Okay? So that's it for that one. Is there any discussion before we move on to the next item?
I'm just curious at this
Excuse
time.
me. Mrs. Elam speaking.
Okay.
No, go ahead. I was
No, I'm
I was
sorry.
still in a stutter. I wanted to also mention, and this is something that was really confusing to me years ago when my husband had first gotten on council. I did not understand the difference between Vienna Rec and Vienna Recreation Improvement Association. I didn't know why they were two things, and it didn't make sense to me why one wasn't running everything. And it took me a while to really grasp what happened. And years ago, it was all under VRIA. Baseball, everything, every single sport was under VRIA. And there were some disagreements. There was some stuff that went on a few years back, and VRIA released those sports to the people that wanted to run them, and that's how we got to where we are now. So the history of it is complicated and interesting at the same time. I think having it all under one umbrella makes a lot of sense, and the communication absolutely has to be there. yeah, I'm very optimistic about how this is going to go.
You also brought up a point about the election of officers. By ordinance, there are people that have to fill that responsibility. We have a liaison from City Council. The Parks Director has to be a member of that. And then the rest of them are basically citizens at large. There are different roles that people in Vienna Rec play. And so when they have the election of officers, we still have the Parks Director and the liaison from the city as a member of that board. That is supposed to be the pathway that, the Parks Department prepares the fields, prepares the basketball courts, prepares whatever facilities need to be run. And the liaison that's here participates in the budget process with us to allow us, for I know a few years back, we added lacrosse. And so we had to buy lacrosse equipment and we had to do those kind of things. And, that's how that works. So I don't know when the terms expire for these people. They are on a set pattern. I know that we have a lady that she keeps the calendar on that. So, but you all will be aware when there are openings. So.
And is that for the park board or for VRIA?
Both. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, can I make a clarification?
A clarification? Yes, sir.
So what I'm trying to get at is we got the agreement of a corporation that first became a corporation or a nonprofit organization. The way it lays it out is there's an annual meeting. Essentially, anyone from the public that is a citizen of the city of Vienna is able to attend that meeting, and they have voting rights as they are a member of that meeting and that meeting only. And that is who selects the board. But then when we read the bylaws, it says that it's basically selected by the current board, which if it's always selected by the current board, then how do you ever get on there unless you get in tight with someone from the current board and say, hey, so-and-so's getting ready to retire, or get out of it, why don't you come in? It's set up to where you can essentially not overturn anything like the corruption that's going right now with new people to replace them. There's no consequences for the actions they take until they get open or they don't even get involved.
So I am absolutely positive that you can attend any meeting that is held. Now, there's a good chance you won't be able to speak because they have business to take care of, but you are certainly entitled to go. I will speak to Chuck Knopfsinger's president of Vienna Rec. I will speak to him and ask for a copy of that and see what that actual process is, because I'm not versed on that, Charlie. I can't tell you, but I will find out. All right? All right? Yes, Kim.
Okay. So I'm just curious as to why this is coming about. And I asked that because I went back through my notes. It was August of 21. And this was brought up at the park board, and I think Mike Ewan was the one who brought it up, requested that VRIA take over all the sports at that time. And Chuck Knopfsinger was president, and he came to the park board meeting, and he said, VRIA doesn't have the capacity to do that. They don't. It takes a lot of volunteers to run these programs. We live and die by those volunteers, those parents who come out, like you fellas, and coach our kids. So from what I'm hearing tonight, I was unaware that, a 14-year-old was coaching a soccer team. I mean, nothing against a 14-year-old, but, what kind of volunteers are we relying on if then VRIA is going to then absorb baseball, softball, coach pitch, and t-ball? I don't know if they have the capacity for that. That's what was stated, and they have a relatively small board, if I'm not mistaken. There are only 7 board members, and I read the bylaws, and the bylaws for VRIA will allow up to 19 board members. So it seems like there's room for folks to be on that board and to help steer the direction of where we want these sports programs to go. But I hate to have a feeling like, VRIA, they got exclusive use of fields 4, 5, and 6, and now they're saying, we can take all these sports programs under our wings, and they're not communicating with the people that are actually, doing baseball, softball, etc. So those are really big red flags for me, and I think that all parties need to come together, and there needs to be a conversation. There's a lot of unanswered questions for me, but.
All right, so we'll get more information and we'll find out. All right? All right. The next item on our agenda this evening is a resolution accepting the Pro Officer Grant and the Task Force Grant. These are grants that we receive every year. The Pro Officer Grant is a grant for $18,500. That puts our resource officer in Jackson Middle School. The Task Force Grant is a $25,000 grant for the Drug Task Force. We share that amount with Parkersburg, and we split it evenly. So of that $25,000 grant, we receive $12,500, and the city of Parkersburg receives the other $12,500. So I have two separate resolutions, one for each of the grants. The Council of the City of the Council of the City of Vienna met on December the 8th, 2022 with a quorum present and passed the following resolution. Be it resolved that the council hereby authorizes Randall C. Rapp, Mayor of the City of Vienna, to act on behalf and enter into a contractual agreement with the Division of Administrative Services, Justice, and Community Services to receive and administer grant funds pursuant to provisions of the Justice Assistance Grant Program. And that's what both of these are funded under, is the JAGS grant, the Justice Assistance Grant Program. And so I'll entertain a motion on the first one for the accepting of the $18,500 grant for the Pro Officer Grant.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the grant, accepting the resolution, accepting the grant from the Pro Officer Grant of $18,500. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. The second resolution, it be it resolved by the council hereby authorizes Randall C. Rapp, Mayor of the City of Vienna, to act on its behalf to enter into a contractual agreement with the Division of Administrative Services, Justice, and Community Services to receive and administer grant funds pursuant to provisions of the Justice Assistance Grant Program. This is to accept the Task Force Grant in the amount of $25,000. I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the resolution. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution accepting the $25,000 Task Force Grant. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, motion carried unanimously. We thank them for those grants. It keeps our officer in Jackson Middle School and helps us with the task force. The next item on the agenda this evening is a bid approval, and that item has been scratched from the agenda. We will not need that bid approval at this point. We move on to item number 6. That is a resolution recommending council members to advise liaisons regarding substantive communications between council members and the department head the liaison represents. Mr. Skogstad, if you would read that again. You got it, great.
Thank you. This is a resolution recommending council members to advise liaisons regarding substantive communications between council members and the department head the liaison represents. Be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that whereas council members who serve as liaisons to department heads are charged with assisting department heads in communicating with council and facilitating efficient and effective communication concerning the business of governance by city council. And whereas fulfilling requests for information from city employees, including department heads to council members, can serve to aid in the performance of the duties of council members. Whereas council members have no supervisory or administrative authority over any employee of the City of Vienna, including department heads, and therefore have no authority to command the performance of any specific task or assignment. Therefore, council members who request information from any city employee, including department heads that bears on the business of the city, should communicate that request for information to the city employee. In the interest of transparency and professional courtesy, the requesting council member should also copy the request to the appropriate liaison to that city department. Where there is no council liaison, the requesting council member should copy the request to the mayor. The department head or employee may refer requests communicated to them to the department liaison or the mayor to establish a time for performance, if any, or to assist with the response to the request per this resolution.
I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the resolution recommending council members to provide liaisons regarding substantive communications between council members and the department head the liaison represents.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the resolution. Is there any further discussion?
So the last time that this was before council, I moved to table it after some comments by council, and I want to take those into consideration. So here's, in my view, the purpose of this resolution. City council is elected by the voters at large, and of course they have to comply with the law and ordinances of the state of, or the city of Vienna. However, beyond that, we are only accountable to the voters. Over the course of my tenure as a council person, it has come up multiple times, primarily with finance. When questions or requests are directed to a department head or employee in a request for information and the liaison's not involved with that, and sometimes it can put the department head in a difficult situation. But in light of the comments the last time I was here, so now if you read the therefore clause, it's that, first of all, in the interest of transparency, which a lot of people talk about being important, which I agree, professional courtesy, that you copy the liaison that would be helping that department head or that department employee to do this. But it's not mandatory, because in that way, if it's a request that really doesn't, bear or rise to that level, it could be a complaint they've received, something like that, it's not necessary. And likewise, it's also not necessary if the council person chooses not to forward it to the liaison, that the department head either can review the request and say, this is something I can deal with, and simply reply. But what this does is it gives our city employees the opportunity and the ability to, if they get a request that either they feel is beyond the scope of their responsibility or for whatever reason, it gives them the discretion to simply forward that to the liaison, if there's no liaison, to the mayor, to say, I'd like some assistance in responding to this request, because it kind of balances the playing field. Council people control the budget, and department heads obviously have to pay attention to that. So I think this is a fair and reasonable compromise to give our employees, our city department heads, the ability, when getting requests from council, to refer those on to the liaison or to the mayor to get assistance in responding to the request. And aside from this, there's no requirement for, there's no ability for a department head necessarily to do that. They're just in a quandary.
Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I guess, can I just get some clarification on the last sentence where it says the department liaison or the mayor, the department head or employee may refer requests communicated to the department liaison or the mayor to establish a time for performance, if any, or to assist with the response to the request per this resolution. My question being, what does a department liaison or mayor, how do they establish a time for performance? And what does that include?
Well, so I can give you an example. I mean, obviously, there can be a myriad of examples. Establish a time for performance, if any. So if I were, and use anybody that's a liaison to a department, if a request from a council person comes to a department head and requests something, okay, and it comes to me and I say, I see this request, but really this shouldn't come from a department head. I want it placed on the council agenda for discussion and resolution. So it's, so it basically is that exercise of discretion. It may be, an inappropriate question for a department head. And I say, hey, look, if we want this from department head, it's coming from, budget presentation or whatever it is. So there can be circumstances where the response shouldn't be coming from a department head. And then if that's, and then it comes before council and we're charged with making those decisions. There can be circumstances like that. There have been.
And let me clarify his answer just from my experience. There are some questions that come forward where there's information that you as a council person want to be gathered, it takes a while to do that. And so if you put in that thing, hey, I want an answer by 4 o'clock today, sometimes that just doesn't work. I've got paperwork with me this evening that I asked Mrs. Roberts to prepare, that she spent, 2 or 3 hours gathering this information alone. And so when that's in there, it's like, there are some times that if we've got Public Service Commission reports to get out, or we've got other things, that we can't just drop everything and answer this question. We would tell you, look, I can't get it to you today. It's tomorrow soon enough. And that's the timeline that sometimes you have to be flexible.
Yeah, I think most of us on council can respect that. I think everyone understands that, I have a full-time job as well, and I can't just drop everything that I'm doing for my job to respond to council duties. But I guess it just kind of concerns me that we use that kind of verbiage in there to establish a time performance, if any. I mean, I think that, I have no issue with CCing someone on an email just so they're aware of it. That's not necessarily my concern. I think trying to establish a time for performance, I think everyone here knows how to respect that. And if a department head says, hey, listen, I need 3 days to get back to you on that, I don't think any of us would say that's completely unacceptable. And I guess my other concern with that is the if any portion, because that assumes then that the department liaison, who is also here on council, can determine whether or not I get a response to that information.
I mean, Chris, and this has come up. So my response to you is, for example, and this has just come up recently, you request something for a department head. You're saying, I want to know what decisions you would make on this issue. And that comes to, from the police department, it goes to Tom. Tom says, wait a minute, this is not something that should, in my view, should come from the department head, the chief. This is something that needs to go on the agenda in a public meeting for council. So time, it's kind of an accountability for if a department head has, says, I'm not comfortable doing this. This is not my job. I want to go to my liaison or to the mayor as the administrator of the city and say, this should be handled a different way. And then so as peers, if we kind of, disagree, because same thing, I'm not in charge of anybody here.
Right.
But I say, I think this is an issue that needs to be addressed first by council, and then if, or the mayor, and say, is this an appropriate topic for a department head response? So the time of a performance, if any, simply means that not just because a council person, just like it says above, just because a council person asks for information from a department head they're not our employees. That doesn't mean they're obligated to respond. And I think that's the purpose of that language. It may just simply go in another path. It's not thumbing your nose. You're talking about being reasonable. We understand that. But I've seen, over more than 6 years now, where this has come up more than once. And this is the only ordinance I've ever, or resolution that I think it serves a very important purpose to both clarify what our roles are and also to give our city employees the ability not to be solely put on the spot by a council person if they feel for whatever reason it's not the right, because a lot of times our department has a lot more experience than we do as far as how stuff works.
Yeah.
So that's the purpose. It's not to thumb your nose at anybody, but it's to say there can be alternative avenues to respond.
No, I agree with that. I think that there are alternative avenues, and I fully agree. I am not an accountant, so I have to rely on those who are accountants for the questions that I have. And I mean, I completely understand that. I guess and I think, if we have to go, and if the department head is uncomfortable, they can certainly ask the mayor. I don't think I have any issue with that. Even, I think it's where the department liaison, who is also a council member, can essentially block me from getting information if they don't feel it necessary. Because we're on the same level and we should have access to that same information and same question. And I mean, if it has to go to the mayor and the mayor can make a decision on that, I think that's okay. But it just concerns me that we're allowing council members who sit beside us up here determine whether or not we can get a question answered.
I think it's, and this is the last I'm going to say about it. So taking that example that you just, you used the term block. I don't agree that's an appropriate term because I keep using myself as an example. I guess because it's easiest. So this request comes through the department, you didn't choose to send it to the liaison. Oftentimes the department head just answers the question and goes on. It's no big deal. The department head says, for whatever reason, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm kicking it over to my liaison. I say, what's the problem? And I say, Chris, this is kind of the approach we're thinking about. What do you think? And you work through it. It's not, I think using the term block is not appropriate because no council person can stop any issue from being addressed. Okay, it's simply that this gives a pathway and that's why and thanks to Russ because he redrafted it and I think cleared it up a little bit. But it simply gives us our city employees and department heads a vehicle to respond if, in fact, responding to the request that's been made is for some reason they don't agree they can necessarily do that. Whether they think I'm being asked to make decisions that aren't mine, or I'm uncomfortable with the request that's been made, or this thing would take 60 hours for me to compile to do, whatever the reason might be, it just gives them a vehicle to get it addressed at a peer level and then revisit the approach to get the question answered.
I can give you a little better clarification from my experience on what Jim's point is. There are things that go on in the city with finances that no one's allowed to know. All right? You can't walk in and say, how much is Joe's bicycle shop doing in annual sales? Those are private. You can't ask those questions. The second one is you can't ask for police reports. Okay? Once it's public record information, it changes the whole thing. But if you have a person that that was in some kind of a incident, you cannot go to the police department and say, hey, I want to know this. And so,
pending criminal investigation.
okay, and so there are certain limits of things that just because you're a council person, by law, you're not entitled to those. And so, Mr. Scogstad, I know you wanted to clarify something.
Well, the only thing, sorry, the only thing I would ask is that I would suggest, and look at it from a different perspective as far as the last paragraph goes for council and how this could be beneficial for council is, what if you have a department head that you're consistently asking information from and you're not getting it? Now this gives you an avenue to some degree to go through the department liaison. It gives the department liaison the ability to say, or the mayor to say, look, there's a timeline. You need to answer the questions. Council's requested this information and you're not giving it to them. And this to some degree addresses that as well. And I just want to put that out, say that because the discussion primarily is focused on council members preventing other council members from getting access or governing what information they may get to. But there's also the benefit here because council has no direct authority over the day-to-day operations of department heads in the city beyond, establishing budgets and those things that are specifically set out in the ordinance. This does give at least some degree of accountability to a council member to get information to council members who are requesting it. So, when you have these things, I mean, sometimes they can go both ways. I can certainly see where you can abuse anything, right? You can abuse any ordinance or statute or whatever. But just another way to think about it is just what I've said is a way. I see this as potentially a way to allow council members to set some type of a time frame or timeline or deadline on getting information and to give them an avenue through the council liaison to get that information. But I'm just putting it out there because just for a different perspective.
Yeah, I guess I just have kind of one more question about this then, and then I'm done. So in that essence then, are we giving the department liaison who is a council member authority over that department head in requesting timelines and requesting information? Because it kind of sounds that way.
Now, I don't think you're necessarily giving them authority. I think you're giving them an expectation and an avenue if that expectation is not being met. Ultimately, in the city of Vienna, the mayor is the administrator of the day-to-day operations of everything. And if council has an issue with individual department heads, typically it's, you go through the mayor for the mayor to address it because that's part of his responsibilities. So I don't know that you're giving him any authority, but you're saying you are giving voice to a council member. You're letting the department liaison know what's going on in their department, right? So if you're the fire department, you don't have somebody doing an end around on your department. But if you're the liaison, you would also like to know whether or not the people that you're supposed to be working with are actually doing their due diligence and reporting to other members of council. And so I don't know that it gives direct authority, but it certainly gives a path that is not very clear to this point. It gives a path that it's not very clear to this point exists, if that makes sense. So, that's all I have to say. I'm just.
All right.
So I have comments on this because I share Chris's concern about trying to deal with the council liaison, who is your colleague here on council. We all have equal rights sitting up here. This happened to me just yesterday, as a matter of fact. On tonight's agenda, later in this agenda, we're going to talk about, ways to finance the pool. And in the resolution, it had said, bank financing, capital reserves, grants, okay, etc. And so I was curious about that, and I reached out to the finance director. I wrote her a simple email, 4 questions. Jim Leach answered my questions, which he didn't answer all of them. The problem is that the finance director, in this case, it could be any department head, but the finance director is not here this evening to answer my questions, and we're only talking about spending $6.2 million. Now, my questions were really simple. One of my questions was, what is a rate for interest for a government? I don't think that's any big secret information. I asked what she, as the person who is responsible for managing our money, what is a comfortable amount, given the capital reserves in its current state, to be taken out of capital reserves? How long would a bank loan be? Would that be 10 years or 20 years? And the reason I'm asking those questions ahead of time is so that I can think about it, think of what impact those decisions that we're going to make are going, what kind of impact that's going to have on the budget, because how much money you borrow and for what length of time you borrow it and what interest rates you pay are very important. But I'm getting my answers filtered through another council person, and he didn't answer all the questions. And the finance director is not here this evening for me to ask the questions. These are not private questions. I don't think there's been a problem, not that I'm aware of anybody asking questions that we shouldn't ask. I know at one point in time, I did not know that you cannot get a baseline for how much how much a business pays, like in B&O taxes or whatever. That's not legal. Okay, didn't know that. Perfectly fine. Totally cool with that. I think it's you're dragging us down a rabbit hole when you use that as an example, because that's not what's going on. Also, what's not going on is demands put on any department head to get something done in a particular point in time, like, hey, I need this, yesterday, or have it done right now. No, there's just questions. We don't get our agenda until Monday, at some point Monday. And then our meetings are on Thursday. And I'm like Chris, I work as well too. It's hard to fit the time in to do these things. And so I take my job really, I feel a lot of responsibility for what we need to do. And I feel, especially when it comes to finance, and the purpose of this resolution, this resolution was brought up 2 months ago, and it's back tonight. The purpose of this resolution is to control information, especially when it has to do with finances. And so I do not support this resolution at all, and I don't see very much of a difference in the first version versus the second version. And I totally agree that we do not, I have no expectation that I have any authority over any employee of the city of Vienna. That's not our role. I think we all understand that. But there is a conflict in the language in this resolution, the same as there was 2 months ago when I brought it up, because it says, that when it talks about the department liaison or the mayor to establish a time for performance, now that is, you are then saying that you are giving them supervision on that. So I think this is a dangerous thing to do. I don't see where it's necessary. And as Chris said, if there's an issue, the mayor, he can decide, I guess, because I know that all my emails get sent to Mr. Leach and the mayor, and without this resolution being passed, and that's fine with me. I don't really care. I just don't want to have to respond to Mr. Leach when I've asked a question of Mrs. Roberts, who gets paid by the city to be the finance director.
Okay, so let me answer that question for you, Kim, for your comments. The reason why Mr. Leach got those questions is because when in my conversation with the finance director, you're asking her to do your job. And that is not her job, is to tell you how to think. Okay? So when you want to know questions, she only keeps the books. She is the record keeper of our finances. She does not determine how we spend the resources that this city has. And so when you specifically ask her, what would you do? She's not a council person. She doesn't get a vote. All right? And so if you want to know what a payment is or an amortization schedule is for 10 years or 20 years, she can give you that to the penny. And then you, as a council person, must decide whether you want to obligate the city for $10,000 a year or $10,000 a month for 10 years to fund this, or do you want to fund it for $8,000 for 20 years? That's not her decision. That's yours. And that's the reason why she didn't answer your questions, because she's very uncomfortable with someone putting her in that position. She gives us the data. It's our responsibility of every person sitting up here. Are you willing to invest $1 million in this program, in this project? And then you have to decide, yes, I really believe in that. I think that would be good long-term benefits for the city. It's not her job to tell you how to think.
Well, I didn't ask her to tell me how to think, Mayor. As a matter of fact,
I read the email, Kim. Yeah, I know exactly what
right
you asked
here.
her.
We can read it all together if you like. It's,
You are putting her in a position where you want her to do your thinking for you, and it doesn't work that way.
Well,
you have to decide what kind of risk you're willing to take based on the facts.
I've had many private conversations with Mrs. Roberts, and she's been very good with her time with me. She has spent hours with me asking different questions. I've asked her different things about the budget. She has been here for a long time. She has a good understanding of it. I would say, is this a good number? Do you feel comfortable with this if we do X, Y, or Z? I'm a numbers person. I run my own business. I have a good grip on finance, and I respect what her opinion is about the financial situation of the city and how far we should extend ourselves. I also appreciate another thing about Mrs. Roberts is that she's very conservative in how she approaches the economic situation of the city. And so I rely on, when I ask her a question, if she can give me what her opinion is, then that helps me formulate a good decision. And I was trying to make a good decision about what we're about to face here tonight, to expend $6.2 million. So I'm not asking anybody to think for me, and I think anybody in this room that knows me knows that that's not going to happen, okay?
Mr. Leach is the liaison as finance chairman.
Yeah, and I saw people shaking their head. Yes, we'd like to know what this email said. There were 4 questions. As a finance director, your recommendation, how much should we take from capital reserve? I know this is a council decision. You manage the money, so what's a reasonable amount to consider removing from capital? Are the grants identified the city plans to apply for? What are your recommendations regarding how much money we should finance for the pool? How many years, 10 or 20? As a city government interest rate is less, than the commercial markets or an individual business, what do you anticipate the rate should be? I know it'll have to be put out for bid, et cetera. What do you think we'll expect? Okay. Obviously, the borrowing costs. Okay, so those were the questions. And so when the finance director got this, and first of all, even though obviously this came up 2 months ago, I've requested as courtesy that Kim copy me when she's making these requests. Didn't happen. All right, even though it wasn't a big deal, she says, oh, well, I know she's going to forward it. Well, then why not copy me on the email? She knows I'm interested. Excluded. So the response, as you may expect, Amy forwarded your inquiry to me. First of all, I recall we have discussed the cost apportionment between grants, loans, and capital reserve in an earlier meeting. Second, I would expect interest rates currently to be in the range of 4% for the government agencies, depending on the term financed. And we know how volatile interest rates are right now. So that's a moving target. All right. Regarding the remainder of your questions, they would require Amy, and this goes to my point, they would require Amy to speculate over decisions upon which she would only advise. This request for advice should be the proper channels, including before council and coming through the administrator of the city, which is the mayor. What is unreasonable about that? Amy's not comfortable saying, you know, it's not my job to make these decisions or to give you advice. You know, and when they're not, they need an avenue to be able to address that. You know, and people can vary on, is this an appropriate question? Is it not? But this is all in the eye of the beholder. And when you get a department head that feels like they're being put on the spot and they have no recourse, and the purpose of the liaison is to assist that department head. What's liaison mean? A go-between between council and that department, because that person spends some additional time, fire, police, whatever it is, and has some additional knowledge about the function of that department. So I don't understand what is so unreasonable, nor do I understand why you consistently refuse to share this information and then get upset when, you know, when the department head's like, I'm not comfortable, you know, answering these questions in this fashion. And that's what's happening here. So that is what was in the email. That was the response that the department had. I'm not comfortable saying these are the decisions that should be made. That goes to what the mayor said. It's not her job, and she's not comfortable doing it. She says, if, you know, council and the mayor comes to me, the mayor is the department head's boss, and says, I want the reports on this because council's requested it, or Kim sends it to me, and I say, and, you know, and I'll say one other thing in terms of, I don't care in this resolution, and I'll even move to amend it, that it can say the liaison can refer it to the mayor for a time of performance, if any, or otherwise respond, because I don't have a problem with taking out that it would be a council person setting the time for performance. That's a minor amendment. The purpose of this is to give our department heads a vehicle to have questions by council who are, you know, like I said, have influence, a vehicle to direct that to a different channel if they feel like it's outside of their comfort zone, their area of responsibility, or for whatever reason. So I don't have a problem with them. And in fact, I'll move to amend that. Well, I don't know if I can do that right now, but I'll say that
You can move to amend it at any point.
Yeah, because
But once you make the amendment, all discussion stops. Waiting for a second, then we vote on the amendment, discuss it.
Because
All right.
I mean, I get what Chris is saying. I'm not trying to be unreasonable at all.
All right, so are you amending it, Jim?
Yes, I'll move. Let me get it back up.
Russ, would you please read that amendment?
Do you know what
So
I'm
you
saying?
understand it?
Okay. Let me get back up to it. If I was on the email.
Sorry, did it in order.
No, you may not, ma'am. You may not speak. I apologize.
All right, so I would move to amend the language to say, beginning with the sentence, the last sentence, the department head or employee may refer requests communicated to them to the department liaison, who may either refer to the mayor to establish a time performance or for performance, if any, or to assist with the response to the request for this resolution. I mean, that way, it's not a council person, it is our city administrator saying, we're not going to perform on this request because this is how we are going to handle this. We're going to put it as an agenda item on council where it's more appropriately addressed or whatever. So I'm fine with that. I mean, I don't care to say, oh, we're not responding.
Can you state the amendment?
Who may, either department head or employee may refer a request communicated to them, to the department liaison or the mayor.
No, to the department liaison, who may refer it to the mayor to establish a time for performance, if any, or to assist with the response to this request for this resolution.
All right, so the department head.
Department liaison
The
may.
department head or employee may refer requests communicated to them, to the department liaison, who may refer it to the mayor to establish a time for performance, if any, or to assist with the response to the request for this resolution. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that,
It's been moved that we amend the resolution to include the sentence, it may be referred by the department liaison to the mayor to establish a time for performance. All right? That's the amendment to that. The addition of that few words in there. The department liaison may refer it to the mayor to establish a time for performance.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the amendment inserting the language, refer requests communicated to them to the department liaison who may refer it to the mayor to establish a time for performance. The only comment that I want to make about that is I have never refused to get an answer for any council person on any question that you've asked, and will never. You ask me any question, I will get you an answer if I am permitted by law to give it to you. If I can't give it to you, then I will tell you that state code prohibits it, or there is another reason, for whatever the reason is, that I can't give you the specific answer that you are looking for. But that is not an issue. You will get the answer that you're requesting.
I asked you about which version of Robert's rules we're using a couple months ago, and I still haven't received an answer about that. But okay.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then I'll call for the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Motion carries 6-1. All right, we're back to the amended resolution now. Is there any further discussion?
So, I just don't get this because, if you ask somebody who's a finance director a financial question, apparently those don't have to be answered. And that person does not have to be here to answer the questions when the items are on the agenda. And so, once again, I just asked a few basic questions. I didn't think they were so terrifying to answer. But it's just, I feel like this is a way to keep people from getting the answers that they need to do their job.
my final comment, I believe it's a way to add a layer of accountability to council people and give our department heads a tool, because you may not feel that you're overburdening or that you're overstepping, but I don't understand why you would object to it. I mean, it's a pretty, that you refuse to copy people. So that's all I have to say. I don't understand why you would object.
Is there any further discussion? Not, then I'll call for the questions. All those in favor of the resolution recommending council members to advise liaisons regarding substantive communications between council members and the department head the liaison represents. All those in favor of the amended resolution, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? Passes 6-1. Before we move on to our next agenda item this evening, we need to take a short break so we can get some electronics set up on the big screen. So we'll take a break, and then as soon as the communications equipment are set up, we will come back. What?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was trying to do it in red on mine.
90 days. Some of the ones that we get now, you get 24 hours. If you don't take it by tomorrow, then they won't hold those numbers because the cost floats so much. One of the biggest things that we have issues with is plastic pipe. The plastic pipe has gone through the roof, and there's always supply issues even if you can get it. So when you look at the numbers that are on the opinion of probable cost, the contingencies that are on there are in there because that is the best guess of what the cost may go to. So you have to figure that this is probably the highest amount that we're going to have to deal with, but it could be substantially lower if we get the pipe or whatever piece of equipment it is ordered in a timely fashion. So I'm going to use general numbers because we do not have a hard fixed number. If I use that number at $5 million, then the option for this is the $1.59 million that is left over from the CARES Act fund that's in there, that we would combine that with $2.5 million, which would give us approximately $4 million of the balance. And that could be shifted down to where instead of using 2.5, we could make it 1.5. There's a floating thing. It depends on how whatever number we accept. But at this point, the funds that we have, we could afford to take the $2.5 million out of the general fund, combine it with the 1.5 million that's left there to make up the $4 million on that, and then go out into the market for the balance for financing. At that point, depending on how much money we're talking about, would determine whether it would be a 10-year note, 20-year note, whatever. And so those are the things we can get you amortization tables for whatever amount, for whatever term that council would choose to finance the balance of this. To offset any of that amount would be the amount of money that we receive from the grants and from the other options that we have for the additional funding. I already have in my possession a check for $250,000 as a grant. And so that $250,000 will offset some of the final costs. All right. So that's my interpretation of our reconciliation of funds. And as always, that is only an opinion. That is nothing set in stone. That is how much risk you all are willing to take. What is your comfort zone as far as how we would finance this and how many years you would like to make that payment. If we're willing to take that initial amount out of our operating funds to pay down the amount of the note. All right? Any questions?
Will you review, just give me the bullet points again on how much and from where, just to make sure I have it right as I'm writing it down here.
So the CARES Act money, including the capital reserve fund budget, is $1.59 million. All right. When we started out with $2.637 million, and we spent $735,000 on the River Road project, and we have amounts set aside for the pumps down at the utility board for $334,690, and the 28th Street stormwater project for $160,000. All right. So in that amount that's available in the capital reserve fund balance, the amount available after the allocations that we've already set aside, and it's $1,437,652. All right. So I misspoke a minute ago because I said it was $1,592. It's $1,437,000. Okay. And so if we would take up our capital reserve account is $10,089,000. If we would take $2.5 million out of that and put it with the 1.4, that would give us $4 million to pay down on this note whatever the final cost is. All right? Offsetting that remaining balance would be at least the $250,000 that we've already received as a donation for the project. And these numbers are subject to change at any time. The project that we're looking at, it's $6.2 million, but there's $1.4 million of contingencies in it, which is, just a very smart way to do that because you have no idea what's available or what could change. So $4.8 million is the low end on it. $6.2 million is on the high end of it, depending on availability, supply, whatever the time frame is. Now, is that good? All right. Yes, sir, Tom?
Is there restrictions on the 1.4 million?
No, there's not. Yes, sir.
We finished? Okay. I'm just make sure I understand what you're saying. So out of capital reserves, you are saying you're going to we're suggesting we take 2.5 million out of capital reserves plus the 1.592 million that's in capital reserves that was from the CARES Act. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. Because it has nothing to do with the American Rescue Plan Fund because that I know there's conditions on that, but we're not talking about that. Just basically it's all capital reserves because 1.592 or whatever is already in capital reserves. We just make a notation that that was CARES Act money. Okay.
1.437.
Yes.
I just have
1.437.
a quick question. Do we know how many other grants is the city currently in pursuit of other grants or funding opportunities?
Yes. But they all have timelines. You have to make the window.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
So we'll make the window. We have a meeting this week with our grant writer.
Okay.
And so she's well aware of the cycles and how they work. Okay? So yes.
Well, I guess it would help me to know what those grants are or approximately how much we could potentially see from those, just so I can get a feel for are we going to be taken out of?
Well, there are no guarantees that will be considered.
Yeah.
All right. And some of the grants have limits on them. And at this point, since we haven't applied for them yet, I would rather not disclose those out of respect for the funding agencies. Okay. Once we apply, then I will tell you exactly what they are, and then we'll know whether we're in the running or not. And I can't give you a dollar amount because each one of them varies. We're going to ask for whatever we can get. I know that one of the funding agencies we're going to reach out to see if we can get them to pay for the handicap accessible ramps the lifts that we need for the pool. That's one of the programs that they do fund. Okay. So, we're going to apply. The land and water grant is not an option. We've already looked into that one. That is not, some of the things that we have in the city are done through the land and water grants. The time constraints on them are just astronomical, and that is not a good grant program to participate in.
Yeah, I guess.
Possible that as grants.
It depends on how much each one of these agencies they only have limited funds, so they try to spread them out as best they can. All right.
Ascertain that amount.
Once we fill out the grants, when we get with Tony this week and we figure out, all the things that are there, then we will make a plan and say, okay, we're going to ask this group for this amount, this group for that amount. Okay. And then there are some independent foundations that are here in town that are very generous with community projects. So we will see what we can do there too.
So none of that money then, I guess it would be safe to say then that none of that money is even guaranteed for this project.
Absolutely none.
Okay.
Other than the $250,000 I have.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is a high probability.
They've always invested in Vienna in the past. Okay.
Maybe the best way to kind of think of it is there's found money out there. We just don't know how much it's going to be and what we
Yes.
count that we will be supported. I don't know if you can get it any closer than just be aggressive and going after every possible diamond.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you don't know, but it would be kind of nice to have an idea. It's like, are we talking about some grants aren't very much at all, less than $100,000, and some grants may be more. So that's my hesitation about it. I think grants are great, and I'm glad we're pursuing it. Any money is good, right? Free money is free money, but when you look at the overall picture of what we're trying to put together here, is it, you're going to peel off a $30,000 grant, which is great. Not going to say it's not great, but it's not really going to make too much of a difference.
I think the other thing that Kim's reminded me of is we don't have a set amount. If we accept the estimate of probable cost tonight, the next step is to go out to bid. And that's when you'll find out what construction companies, what people are involved, because once you get your bids, then, obviously we would more than likely take the low bid unless it was an unqualified company. But these are projections. The numbers, well, you have no idea what's going to come in. Depends on how hungry someone is for the business. So even though these are estimates, that's why it's called a probable cost. There are no guarantees. It could be higher, could be lower, but once you get to the bid stage, that's when you'll actually have numbers that we will come back to council and say the low bid for this project is X amount of dollars. And that's when you'll accept the bid, and that's when the project will actually move forward. So this number tonight that is out there is simply a best guess with a contingency number put in it that, there are no crystal balls. You're going off experience.
Yeah, I guess I understand that for sure. I do this every day, and I've talked with you about that contingency number, but I guess for me to kind of feel comfortable with this, I feel like we should establish as a council and as a city how much we are willing to pay for a pool. Because I guess my question is, if we put this out for bid and we get, say people aren't really interested in building pools next year, and we get 2 bids and they come in at $8 and $10 million, are we stuck selecting one of those no matter what?
No, we can reject all bids. Oh yeah, we don't have to take the bid.
Okay, because I feel like I would feel more comfortable as if we could set like a number and then figure out we have X number of general funds, X number of grants, and this is what we plan to do from financing before moving forward, because it feels like we're just kind of signing a blank check at this point, and it makes me a little bit nervous.
We are not obligating ourselves to a thing, nothing. Until you accept the contract for whatever that dollar amount was, that's when it gets real. Tonight, the probable cost, that's a guess. The estimates that come in from the contractors, that's up to council to decide if we can afford it or not. So at this point, we're not obligated to any of that. This is the way the bid process works. But you have to get to a point where you can go out for bids in order to get those hard numbers. That may be one of those situations where one of the companies comes in and says, I'll bid this X amount of money, but you have to accept my bid within 10 days. Or the next one says, I'll guarantee my cost for 30 days, which gives you a little window. There's some variables, but tonight, no matter what number we decide on, does not obligate us to spend a dime. We can walk away. All right, that's my item number 8. Melissa, it's yours.
Okay. So that we're going into number 9. Sorry, I had to copy and paste some things here to get the order back. So right now we're doing the resolution for the Jackson Pool project for the financing plan. Do you want me to read that portion of it?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
Do you want me to read the resolution that we're accepting the financing plan?
Well, okay.
Is that what you were wanting to go into?
Well, let me put that back out to council again. The issue that Melissa's brought up is the options that we've put out on the table is we take money out of our capital reserve account, we go out for bank financing for part of the note, and we try to secure all the grants that we can get. Now, Are there any other funding options that you want to be included in this process? I mean, that's the only ones that are available to me. So if you've got something that I'm not aware of, if not, then the resolution is to accept those three options for the funding of this project. All right, I don't hear any more, so I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the resolution accepting the financing options for the financing of or the payment of our pool project.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the options of capital reserve, bank financing, and grant funding to pay for the pool project. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then I'll call for the question. All those in favor of the resolution accepting the financing options, please, or the funding options, please signify by raising your right hand. Okay, passes unanimously, so we have a pathway now. All right?
Okay, so the final agenda item today is the resolution accepting the revised opinion of probable cost from Omni. This is all based on the decisions that were made last week about the items that were going to be included or not included in the design. On the line right now, and Garrett, if you want to make sure that everything's good still, we have Mr. Foreign from Omni Associates, and we have JT from Martin Aquatic. And I asked them to tune in so that way, if we have any questions, that they are here and available for us. So the new rendering is out, and a note about the rendering: the lines on the bottom of the pool will be there. They put the lane lines in, but in the final product, the lanes will be painted on the bottom of the pool. The fogger is too small to see on the rendering, so you won't see that in that render. I do want to open it up and ask what feedback you have on the new design that we have put together and agreed on, and you'll see the new numbers compared to last time. For myself, I had done some of my own estimates to see kind of what I thought things were going to be, and my number, I was pleased, was very close to theirs. Mine was still less than theirs because I was probably shaving off more, but my number was pretty close, so I was pleased with that. Open up for discussion. Or do I need to make a motion? I'll make a motion first to accept this, and then we have discussion.
Yes, we can do that.
All right, I'll make a motion to accept, let me get the wording right, to accept the revised opinion of probable cost from Omni.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the revised cost estimate from Omni. Is there any further discussion? So I'd like to start. Kim, you pointed out the last time that we went through this that there were some errors in the addition that they did. And so they went back and they've corrected those errors. All right. So when we removed $600,000 worth of amenities from the design, that number that is reflected, the original number should have been approximately $6.5 million for the original rendering, and now it's down to 6.2, and of course that includes the $1.4 million worth of contingencies. And so the original number was wrong, because if you all recall in our discussion, Kim pointed out that one item was not tallied, and she was correct. So that number, the initial number that we saw, was higher than what was in the initial paperwork, and so now that reflects that. I did have those numbers verified today, and so that's 6.2. If you take the design cost and all the contingency out of it, it makes the project approximately 4.8, and that contingency has to stay in there because you cannot gauge the market at all. The supply issues are just unbelievable, so.
I guess I'll start the conversation here. As you can see, kind of in that last page, we're looking at a main pool that is basically $1 million, and a waiting pool that is $500,000, so about $1.5 million. Then the water slide is $1.5 million in and of themselves. It seems like a lot of money. I know that they have kind of combined all of the overhead and contingencies and stuff into one kind of lump sum at the end. But I still think that, you know, if we divvy that out between the 4 things there, at, you know, $500,000 a piece, you still end up at about approximately $2 million for the water slides. I think, you know, folks have spoken this evening about their concern about the amenities that have been agreed upon. And water slides was never really one of those. And, you know, one of the things that I really appreciate is the dignity of the pools. It's a public pool and should be accessible to everyone. I don't believe that the amenities that we're providing are accessible to everyone. I think that, you know, the main pool and the waiting pool and the building and sites, those things have to be done in order to open up a pool. The water slide, I don't agree with. And for, say, 1.5 or $2 million, that's almost 50% of the work when looking at the main pool and waiting pool. I just think that that money could be better spent. Even if council is comfortable spending $6.2 million on a pool, I think we should look at alternate water slide options that do not cost between $1.5 and $2 million to provide other amenities that have been requested by the community and residents of Vienna.
All right, who else?
Just as a reminder, those items were discussed last week and we did vote on those. And so we're not discussing really the scope of the project anymore. We're talking about the project that we've moved forward with and what the cost is for that. You know, are we going to accept this opinion of probable cost or are we not? So the discussion about, I can appreciate, you know, still making a stand and saying what you are for and what you're not for. But at this point, those items have already been discussed and we've moved on from those. So I feel like the subject at hand needs to be, are we prepared to accept this and move forward so that we can start having the bid specs and things being put together?
I mean, respectfully, I hear you, and I actually voted against the decision to accept the water slides last week. And I was attempting to make a motion to provide different cost options because now we only have one estimate for water slides. So we have no idea if a smaller pool could cost significantly less or if it could be a wash based on the cost of just the pump and everything else that has to go along with it. So with respect to what you said, you know, I am not comfortable with that price because the water slides to me seem like an exorbitant amount of money for one amenity that I don't think is going to be beneficial to our community as a whole.
Okay. Other comments?
Well, I mean, I agree with Chris, and I understand we accepted the design last meeting, but the meeting before that, we had a special meeting where we all unanimously voted that we were going to get options for a water slide, a potential splash pad, okay? And then we just undid it last meeting, and I don't understand what happened. But I think tonight was very illuminating for me. We had folks who came and spoke, especially, you know, somebody who wants to be able to use the pool is really not going to be able to do it with dignity, and I can't underscore that enough. I'm somebody who faces limited mobility myself, and I look at our community. We have lots of seniors, and I don't think that we are meeting the mark as far as accessibility goes. I just don't, and frankly, I'm highly disappointed in it, because 2 chair lifts, it doesn't cut it in 2022. I think we have to have more compassion than that, and I think that for me, I mean, we value our residents and what the needs are, and we've had the public say, hey, we want more accessibility, we want splash pad, but we've ignored that for this slide. And I'll be the first one to say the slide is exciting, I no doubt, but I don't think that it meets enough. It doesn't serve enough people. Here's an example. We have daycares that come to our pool. We have 2 different daycares, and they bring between 20 and 25 kids to our pool. These are daycares. I guess the daycare is going to come, and those kids are going to look at that slide, which they cannot use, but they really could use a splash pad. But I go back to this. If we are saying that we are comfortable spending, 6.2 million, if you take out that slide, we're back to 4.5 million, basically. We wouldn't have to finance this, because if you go and you finance $2 million, 10 years at 4%, you have $429,000 in borrowing costs, okay? That payment for $2 million is $20,000 a month, $240,000 a year, plus what it takes to, budget to run the pool. Normally it's $150,000. I anticipate it's going to be more, because there's going to be more to maintain. So maybe that's a $200,000 budget. So now we're up to almost $500,000 annually to pay for the pool. And while I totally support the pool, where is that money going to come from out of the general budget? Because it's got to come from somewhere to pay for the pool, to pay the debt service on the pool. And so I once again have to take a deep breath, because we're saying $2 million for a slide that nobody really requested. It's not giving us the accessibility that we want, and then we're going to end up paying an extra $400,000 in borrowing costs. And I mean, it's a lot for me. I don't agree with it.
I'll address a couple things. So as far as undoing things last week, like you're saying, it wasn't undone, because the requests that we had made previously in November came at a cost, but we didn't know that when we were asking for it. Now, I could have said, just do it and send us the bill, but you can't do that.
Well,
so I wasn't going to ask council to pay for something without knowing it. So we brought it back to say, okay, it's going to cost something to get other options. Are we going to do this or not? And we decided not to. So it wasn't that decision didn't matter. It's that we didn't have all the information. It wasn't a back and forth with us and Omni. We made a decision, and then we adjourned, and I gave them the information, and they said, well, it's going to be this. Well, we're already adjourned, so we have to have another meeting. So that was an extended conversation, if you will, about what we're going to do. And so we decided not to do those other options last week. That's how that all transpired.
Okay, and I
as a
appreciate
reminder.
what you're saying. And I recall that when it was brought up at the meeting that the mayor had told, I'm sorry, I can't remember the gentleman's name from Omni that was here.
Mr. Foreign.
Okay. The mayor had said there shouldn't be a cost for that because we hadn't accepted the design. So, and I understand, maybe, they read the contract one way, we read it another way, and they're saying they want to charge us for that. Well, I think we're being pretty short-sighted if we don't. There was never even a number thrown out. How much was it going to cost for them to give us that stuff? Is that $5,000, $10,000, $500,000? I mean, sometimes you got, well, I know this, you have to spend a little money to make a little money in business, right? So sometimes you have to spend a little money to save a little money. And I think if we would have spent a little money, then maybe we save this $2 million or whatever. I mean, we have all looked at, I had somebody send me, I don't know how many different screenshots of slides today of how inexpensive they can be. And by going into the pool, okay? Martin Aquatic and Omni are working on that wonderful project that they're doing in Marshall County at Grandview, okay? They have a slide similar to the one that you're proposing. It may even actually be identical, I'm not sure. But at any rate, it dumps right into their pool. So you have that cost savings of not having a filtration system and everything that you need to maintain the slide that is basically freestanding, just because you put it into the pool. And those are, I think, the kind of questions that Chris had, certainly questions that I had, and it would have been worth the money to get those answered.
I want to address one other thing. There's a lot of conversation, and we can all use the term the public generally, but I believe the public is represented well here. My people just might not be here standing before everybody. I've gotten a lot of feedback with people saying, we cannot wait. This is great. The slide looks great. We can't wait. I have not received anybody that has said, this is a terrible idea. Okay. The public is a diverse group, and our community is a diverse group of people, and we were elected by them, and we reflect them. And so I think it's important to be cautious not to lump the public all into one pot, because they're not.
No.
I have public too, and Jim has public, and Roger has public, and Chris has public. We all have people that we spend time with and are getting feedback from, and we're here to hash it out and figure out, where it all lands. So just because some people don't get what they prefer doesn't mean that everybody didn't. And as far as the ADA accessibility and that kind of stuff, we also wanted to make sure we weren't messing up the pool for potential swim teams and things like that. So, were we going to put a ramp in the middle of it? Were we going to do zero entry into it that was going to interfere with it? So, all of these were very thoughtful things that went into it. And those lifts are not going to be locked up and made this big spectacle. Those need to be out there and available. And, those are that's going to be part of, management and what we do as far as implementing all these things to make sure that we are taking care of everybody. So,
well, respectfully, I think when somebody who has limited mobility is telling you there's no dignity in that, we need to open up our ears and listen to that. And we're representative of the public. I just mentioned, I have limited mobility. I'm not the only one up here that has limited mobility.
But we also had somebody earlier, that was here who had limited mobility and was for the chairlifts. So even those with limited mobility are a diverse group.
Well, sure.
Everybody's not the same. So there are some that don't want it and some that do want it. So again, it's not all the same. They can't be lumped in together.
All right, so are there any more council comments?
Yeah, I guess I just have one last comment on this. I think it would have been wise at the beginning of this, as it was stated, I can't remember exactly who mentioned it, but the fact that there was any kind of public forum or public meeting where all of the public would have been welcome in one location and we could have been present to hear everyone from all opinions. I know that there was a survey done for the master plan, but that was almost a year ago. And people's kind of concerns and interests change, especially when it comes to what we actually are able to do with the pool. And so because we haven't had that true open public input, I think we are all coming to this table with different interests and concerns because we're being told different things. So I guess I wish that this process had been done more inclusively to include more public opinion, because then we wouldn't necessarily have to sit up here and debate whether or not a $2 million pool is worth it. We would have gotten feedback on if people even wanted a $2 million pool. And we would all heard that at the same time. So I guess coming back to, the point at hand, and accepting this opinion of probable cause, I hate to put JT or Mr. Foreman on the spot, but, I assume that they do, especially Martin Aquatics does pools all the time. So how much of a cost difference do we save if we have a slide that goes directly into the pool? And is there a significant cost savings for us as a city if we even reduce the size of the pool by, say, 5 feet, if that's okay to ask them?
This is JT. If I can help to understand the question, one was what is the potential cost savings if we go into the pool rather than into runouts? And I think the second part of the question was what is the potential cost savings if we reduce? You stated the size of the pool by 5 feet, but I think you mean the height of the slide tower by 5 feet.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the slide. Sorry.
Gotcha. So the first part, the cost savings associated with running the slide or slides into the pool versus into runouts. The original conception for the concepts as those were developed were that there were other features that were going to be incorporated into the pool. As such, a dedicated area within the existing pool for the runouts of the slides to end in the pool really wasn't available in the original concept, and that's obviously evolved as some of the pricing exercises happened here. Your cost savings in that case would be the elimination of the runouts. There would be an end terminus piece added to the end of the slides, and those could be terminated into the pool wall. However, the pool wall and gutter system would also be modified in order to make that accommodation. The cost savings that you'd really realize would be in the reduction of the filter system, or that would be dedicated to serve the slides as it is conceptually identified currently. So you're probably looking at just gross numbers somewhere between $150,000 to $200,000 in savings. The big difference operationally that you would experience there is that the rider height changes when you run a slide into a runout versus when you run a slide into a pool. When you run the slides into a pool, the manufacturer's minimum height requirement and depth requirements come into play. So the depth of pool where the slide hits the pool is required to be 42 inches in an area that's as wide as the slides plus 5 feet and out 20 foot in length. And the minimum rider height for a slide running into a pool in that condition is a 48-inch tall person. When the slides run into runouts, that height requirement is reduced to 42 inches. So you increase your ridership to individuals that are 42 inches in height rather than 48 inches in height. Generally, this adds about 2 to 3 years age difference in the usability of the slide ridership.
Okay, so I guess to my second question then, if we get a slightly smaller slide, then it sounds like that won't really make a huge difference because most of the savings is in the fact that the filter system just costs a lot of money because it has a separate pump and filter and everything associated with it?
Yes, there would be some cost savings in reducing the overall slide height, the tower height. Obviously, there's 5 foot of the support tower structure that would be reduced, and the overall length of the fiberglass slide would be reduced. So there is some cost savings there. I don't have exact figures for you on that, but my guess is we might be saving somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 to $30,000. But we would need to confirm that based on an alternate slide design.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense.
Are you done, Chris?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, great. Any other comments or questions?
Can I amend the probable cost to remove the slide and reduce the probable cost by whatever that is? To get my calculator out and see what it is, but.
I think you could amend the dollar amount.
Okay.
Man, I've been sitting here thinking about that question in anticipation. Right now, I think because the design has already been approved, I think you could amend the dollar amount of what you're willing to accept as far as the probable cost.
Okay, so let's do that then. The resolution accepting the revised opinion of probable cost from Omni. The resolution as it's written says, be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of Vienna that it hereby accepts the revised opinion of probable cost for the Jackson Pool project in the sum of,
I think what you're going to happen is if you do amend it, it does pass. You're going to have to go back essentially. Well, I think at some point you're going to have to decide.
where you're going to take it out of. Okay, so the resolution as it was presented would be the sum of $6,282,165. If you were going to amend that, what number, make your amendment, and what number are you plugging in?
Okay, I would like to amend it to remove the money for the water slide, which is $1,526 and $1,526,907. So the probable cost then would be $4,755,000, $4,755,258. Basically taking the 6.2 and removing 1.5. And I understand that there are contingency costs for the slide wrapped up in that 1.4 million, but
So the number that you said, Kim, is $4,755,258?
yes.
All right. So we have a motion to amend the dollar amount. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we amend the dollar amount. Is there any further discussion? I'll have to go on record as saying I oppose the reduction in this. I believe that based on the cost estimate that we've received and the contingency amount that's in there, we're going to come out at significantly lower than what it is by the option of us buying the slide and some of the other things that were explained to us. So I would recommend that we do not change this amount, that the resolution stays as presented.
This amendment changing the amount, would that would take out the slide totally, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
It's going to take the money out. It's going to take that much money out.
Yeah.
You got to take the slide out because you can't pay for it.
Yes.
Pragmatically speaking.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any further discussion? So we have an amendment on the floor to reduce the amount of probable cost to $4,755,258. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion fails 2-5. So we go back to the original resolution as it was presented. It's a resolution accepting the revised opinion of probable cost from Omni in the amount of $6,282,165. Is there any discussion?
Do I need to amend that to include that dollar amount in what was because we just had in the sum of, and we had a blank there because we didn't have it at the time. Do we need to amend it to actually insert that dollar amount into it?
No, I think, yeah. Are you talking about the resolution?
Yeah.
No, you're,
Okay.
the information that you provided.
Okay, I didn't know if I needed
And
to.
I apologize. Did I miss motion in a second?
Yeah. I did the motion.
Oh, you
Jim
did it. All right.
seconded.
So we're good. All right, we're
Yeah.
good there. All right then. All right. I'll call for the question then. All of those in favor of accepting the resolution, accepting revised opinion of probable cause in the amount of $6,282,165, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed? All right, it carries 5-2. All right, at this stage, we now have a number. We now tell Dick that we want to go out and have them prepare the bidding documents, and then we will find out how well the market will stand us. At that time, we will come back as a council and decide if that's the amount that the council wants to invest in a swimming pool project.
JT, Mr. Foreign, thank you for joining us.
Well, the,
No problem. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, Tom, I'm sorry, go
we
ahead.
won't reveal the 6 million, 6.2 million.
No. No. They'll prepare the bid documents and send it out. All right?
See,
Well, all right, that concludes our agenda for this evening. I have one council comment that I would like to make before we go. Chris Mancuso will now be our representative on the Alternative Transportation Council. And so Chris is going to find us a way to get our riding trail from the connection with Parkersburg up through Vienna. So Chris, thank you for serving on that. I'll talk to the folks down there and make sure that you get on the email list and notification of the meetings and all that.
Sure.
All right, thank you for that. All right, any other council comments this evening?
One brief.
Jim?
So I'm mindful of everything that people came in and talked about with respect to access with dignity, with respect to preferences, with respect to the sticker shock of the cost of these slides. You know, the last time this pool was sitting here, I was 4 years old, and I'm old. Okay, so that's been a long time ago, 1964. In fact, Dwight Norman put up a picture of the plaque of the original pool this morning. So in that amount of time, we now have an opportunity to revisit this. People have opinions. I think these water slides are a bold move that are going to be, you know, I've been, you know, since this is going on, just reading about water slides, popularity, you know, Blizzard Beach, and from the original water slide, which went, you know, and the popularity of those in the splash pad. And I realized, and there was a comment to me about a woman who said, I have a 1.5-year-old and 3-year-old, you know, that aren't going to have access to that slide and would really like to have splash pad. And I can appreciate that too. I think in this process, what has happened is just like zero entry in the main pool. Everything is going to conflict and is going to boil down to a choice. How is that zero entry going to affect? And so the question to me boils down to, what is the real demographic in our pool, you know, in terms of, you know, use by seniors versus young families versus, and I've looked back at some of those numbers, and our pool attendance has fluctuated a lot over the last probably 2 decades, all right? But the real demographic and the real is the family draw. You know, we have access for seniors. We've made those accommodations as best we can. So I think on balance, this is a bold move that is going to provide a feature that I think is really going to be popular, because just like everybody's surveyed, I mean, you know, somebody said, oh, the slide's going to get boring. I want to, you know, I mean, everybody has their opinions. And I've, you know, my grandkids are here, and I've got all those ages, you know, 18 months to 10 years. And I asked them too, and showed them pictures, and the eyes light up. They slide, you know, they're like, is that Disney World? You know, and it's different. So everybody's got their opinions, and we're all entitled to those. And the consensus is, I think Melissa's point is really well taken. We all have, you know, input from the public. In the public meetings, in my experience, you know, sometimes, like with Charlie and company showing up with respect to the issue of the ball fields, which fortunately I wasn't here when the vote was taken, but are galvanizing and polarizing, and people show up. A lot of times, I'll never forget my first term when Roger said, you know what, the public, if the toilet's flush and the water comes on, they don't really give a flippity flip. They don't want to be bothered with some of this stuff. So you don't get that input and that feedback. So we have to discern some of it. So it's a matter of choice, a matter of opinion. I've supported this because I think it is going to be something that's going to distinguish. And because you think if a family comes here and they're looking where to move in this valley, and with the advent of COVID and all the mobility that we have now, and broadband access for people working from home is a tremendous opportunity. I know in the legislature, we've got to set that out in the state, but it's not a problem in Vienna. We have that pipe that would allow families. And you get a 10-year-old that comes here and looks at this pool, with his, hey, you want to move here, Johnny? I'm like, wow. So there's a lot of opportunity with it, and not everybody's going to be satisfied, and I know I'm going on more so, but I've thought a lot about it. And, and then one more comment with respect to Vienna Rec. I coached Pee Wee football for a lot of years, and I never wanted to be on those boards, okay? Because parents and sports, and I was like, thanks, but no thanks, You do have an opportunity, and there is, I think, 19 seats on that Vienna Rec. And when you think about the dissension between baseball and soccer right now, and these decisions being made by two different entities, you guys have an opportunity, to get involved with this, get on those boards, and to take it all and consolidate it into one body, one governing body, versus some in the park and some in, that never made sense to me anyway. So to consolidate and strengthen and then join the ranks of that and put I think that's, that's your call to action, right? And I'm talking to you guys. So you have an opportunity right now, and I think by stepping up, you've brought this attention because, I hadn't heard about this letter, about Vienna Rec or VRIA being willing to take over the sports until you guys brought these issues up. So, you pays your money, takes your chances. This is where we are. I'm encouraged by the progress forward, and I'd really like to see, this issue with the sports teams and so on really draw the attention that it is, and get all of you parents involved. Not to be in a situation where, you're asking rhetorical questions and saying I'm going to leave. You have an opportunity here. I hope you seize it.
Sellout crowds coming Thursday.
Good.
I have one quick comment, and Jim, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said your kids get excited and look at these slides and ask if it's Disneyland, right? Unfortunately, Vienna is not Disneyland, and we don't have the budget to be Disneyland. So that is my biggest concern when it comes to these slides, is that 30% of this entire project is going into water slides, which I don't think is fiscally responsible for the city of Vienna. If we were Disneyland, build $2 million slides all day, but we are the city of Vienna, and I think that we should respect that. I look forward to being involved with the VRA process and kind of hearing how that plays out, because I do think it's important that everyone gets involved with that who are in all of the sports, and every sport should be represented in that organization should we allow them to kind of take over all of the sports. And so I want to be a part of that and help you guys, because I think that's going to be a big transition. And I agree. I think it's a good idea to put everything under one umbrella. That way, all of those decisions can be made under one entity. I just want to make sure that that transition is done smoothly and not abruptly, without forethought and kind of, public conversation with the involved entities, whether it's soccer or basketball or baseball or football, so that we can make sure that everyone is equally represented on that board for sure.
And to be fair, there's been many, many months where they couldn't get a quorum. They couldn't do business because they couldn't get a quorum. So when there's 19 openings and you can't get a quorum to be there, it's tough. So I hope you do step up and be part of it.
I think the group you're talking about is the park board, not VRIA. They're two different. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're not the ones that couldn't get a quorum. It was the park board.
I mean, it's just,
So
it's tough.
I do have a comment before we close, if you don't mind. So, yes, please, I'm so pleased that you guys want to be a part of the VRIA, and I think that's essential to moving forward. Let's make sure they get the information, because I didn't even think that those meetings were public, because it's a private 501c3, and so as far as I know, they don't have to notice their meeting in the newspaper. It's certainly not on the website. I've never been able to attend one. I would love to attend one. I don't want to be on their board, but I would love to attend one of their meetings. I attend every park board meeting. And so there's a missing link here, because these folks who want to get involved, they've been saying that since the first time they came, last month and talked about it. And nobody said, hey guys, there's a VRIA meeting. And you know what? We only have about 6 people on the board, but we can have 19. You guys are very enthusiastic. Let's get on the board and work together. That didn't happen. I want to see that happen. Okay. I understand, and that's a problem. There's been no communication, and so I think they've certainly extended themselves halfway. I want to see the VRIA meet them and tell them, give them the information, open arms, and welcome them in, and see how they can all work together. Because I think at the end of the day, volunteerism, the effort you guys put out, the effort that Chuck Knopfsinger puts out and his folks, I mean, that's what makes it all happen. And we're doing it for the kids. You guys, it's an unpaid position. There's nothing in it but just love of helping the kids and teaching the kids about sports. And I mean, I'm a kid who grew up in Vienna rec sports, and I think it's so important. But we are entering a phase now where people aren't trusting each other, people aren't, happy with what's going on. And when you guys say, if we don't fix this, it's going to ruin your baseball, softball programs, I believe you 100%. Because I've sat down with you, we've discussed it, we've looked at stuff, and this is really serious. And I don't think just saying, hey, VRIA is going to take it all over. I don't necessarily agree with that unless there's participation with folks from baseball, softball. So that's my comment on that. And I just want to say that back to what the water slide situation, I wish that, I think that was fiscally irresponsible, but I look forward to a new pool. I do appreciate, I know you probably don't think this, but I do appreciate the work that you've done. And it's tough. You're never going to make everybody happy. But, that's a big expense.
Yeah, it's been fun. I want to just make a comment about the VRIA. I know you guys feel ignored by them. VRIA, I know, did not feel like they should be telling baseball what to do because baseball wasn't theirs. So, they were trying to respect that boundary and not cross that, because the baseball and those have belonged to the city for many years. So they weren't going to cross over and interject and try to impose solutions that they really didn't have authority to do. And so the move was then that they wanted to be able to bring it all under one umbrella so that they can now do that. And I know the meeting is this coming week and you're excited about that. And that is what they have been dying to do.
Is the live stream still working for that one? Because the live stream cut out right before Charlie's speech and mine today. But it turned back on as soon as public forum. So did it work for that one?
What one?
What you just said.
You're calling me a one. Okay.
I'm sorry. Is the live stream still on for the city council?
Live stream is still on, and there's no button up here that we push to cut people off.
Well, it worked. Whatever happened worked. The live stream cut out right before his speech and then turned back on as soon as the public forum, technical difficulties, the public forum turned back on. Just make sure that's on.
So, okay.
That's what happened. It's funny. It's not funny to me.
It's not funny. No, and I don't understand why there's any. This is what I'm saying, though. Be ready to work together, because VRIA is ready to work together. But it wasn't their place yet. You wanted to co-opt. You wanted to work with people that weren't technically in any kind of position.
You want to have this discussion with this gentleman, that's fine, all right? Okay? All right? Meeting adjourned.